Thank you so very much, Jennifer. And thank you to Joyce. You got that right. Her infectious optimism about Nigeria would make even the naysayers get a bit of hope, no matter what. So congratulations to you, Joyce. It's difficult to keep up that kind of spirit when all around you, you see things not quite working the way they should. But we do know that it takes this kind of enthusiasm about a subject matter for people to crack the code of anything. So you will definitely, infect as many of your fellow citizens as possible because we need that to happen. I am very delighted to keynote speak at this event. I look forward to what the rest of the speakers have to say. Because there's absolutely none of us who's got the lockdown on what democracy is, what government is, what governance is, and what the way that we should engage it. So definitely, this is a gathering of people who have an appetite to learn. I am a learner. I was not one of those that said, "Are you a learner in this country?" I am a learner. I love learning. So we're off to this conversation around a government a government by the people, and it's so important that we're doing this on this day. But let's first just stand in solidarity with all of our fellow compatriots who marked this day by going out there to stand against repression, to stand against poor governance, and ended up, being brutalized in the process of using a day that is called Democracy Day in our country in an ironic kind, or is it a paradoxical kind of way? The day of democracy becomes a day that citizens' rights are trampled upon, but it is just going to be a blot. We're going to definitely get to the place where democratic rights are respected in our society. And I think that it is in line with this desirable ideal that you have carried on with this kind of program that you've organized today, so that we can intellectually engage ourselves in what democracy is about and what the role of the people really is in democracy. So I start off by stating that I like to sort of get a sense around the terms so that we can then go deeper into the conversation. So the first thing says government. So when we think of government, who are we talking about? What are we really talking about? And in the basic definition of government, which I'm trying to be very as basic as possible today, because I know that we are a mixed crowd. So I don't want to assume that, I'm speaking to people who have gone to policy school and therefore can understand some concepts, although it's a mixed crowd. So there are also people who know better than I do. So the basic definition of government is those who exercise authority and make decisions on behalf of people in the society in order to make things that are important for people happen. So it's basic. So the way that I normally stop and get people to think is that every society is made of people, a collection of individuals. People are, a group of persons who either constitute a nation, a community, they are basically a collection of individuals. And so in our society, we call the Nigerian society, or we call, say, the community that I come from, our society. So those groups of people ultimately are living together. They would have private problems and they would have public problems. For their private problems, they don't need anybody. They don't need any entity. They don't need any group of people with authority to do anything about their private problems. Those are their private problems. Government is not going to be interested in looking for a wife or a husband for you. That's a private problem. It is your business to take care of your private problems, right? But there are public problems, and so you have people in society. I say there is a first P. That P represents the people. There is a second P. It represents their problems, and then there is another P. It represents, the policies, or the programs that they need in order to solve their problems. And these problems, as I just said, have to be common problems. They have to be problems that are best solved at scale. So, they are not private problems. When you have problems that are big, you need a common system to be able to solve them. And that's the basis upon which you have an authority to which these people in society give their allegiance to, on the basis of which they can now do things on their behalf. And so that gives us clearly a definition around the people, government, okay? And so you are on Democracy Day sort of saying, okay, maybe the people are not quite understanding that democracy is government by the people. So maybe we should remind the people of Nigeria that actually the definition of democracy from the origin of it is, you have to forgive me, I have an uncle who is doing everything to reach me. So, so you say to yourself that the government by the people is a way of sort of stopping to remind Nigerians that the people who originated democracy, what they had in mind is that democracy is the rule of the simple people. In the Greek origin of democracy, demos and kratis, the people and ruling. Okay, so in their conceptualization, it was direct democracy. So what would happen is that everybody would come up to the village square, and then there would be a common problem that they need to solve, and everybody. So that was direct democracy. But as the principles began to mutate, we now ended up with what we call the modern democracy, and the epitome of that is the United States. Their democracy is more than 250 years old now, and with their democracy, we found indirect representation. So the direct representation, the direct democracy and indirect democracy. So the indirect representation. In indirect representation, the people collectively agree to delegate their authority to a set of people that they elect, so that they would now form the entity that is called government. So that the people to whom they delegate this authority to would then make laws and make decisions on their behalf, take decisions on their behalf. So we get to this basic understanding of what democracy is about. So we then remember that with democracy, we have to recognize that it is Abraham Lincoln who then gives this very good definition, says that democracy is government of the people, for the people and by the people. And so in that definition, Lincoln was essentially saying to the people that they own democracy. Democracy is owned by the people. And so when you look at the actors in democracy, there are at least three sets of actors in democracy. You've got the people who form the electorate, then you've got the people that they elect, they are called the politicians, and then you've got the regulatory system that looks over the relationship between these two groups. And this regulatory system are things like the constitutional order, the Electoral Act, as well as the institution of the elections management, or the judiciary, or increasingly in the case of Nigeria, the security agencies and all of that. So you've got this regulatory context, then you've got the people as the electorate, and then you've got the politicians as the political class. Now, what I normally say to people is that when you want to look at a democracy and whether it is functioning well, you've got to look at what's going on with the three angles in what a recent research that I did called Fixed Politics identifies to be the three critical pillars on which any democracy rests. And in looking at it, you would find out that it is the pillar of the citizens that matter the most for what will become of the pillar of the political class and of the pillar of the regulatory system that adjudicates the political interaction between the people and those that they elect to represent them. So I begin to wind this up by saying that when you look at any democracy, and that democracy is not functioning, you will find that if you have poor quality of political class and politicians, it is simply because the citizens making up what we call the electorate, making up what we call the demand side of governance, are not doing what they ought to do. If you look at the regulatory system, that is the constitutional order and the political structures, and they are not functioning, it is because the people who are supposed to be the owners of democracy are not doing what they ought to do. Therefore, if you want to correct the anomaly in any democracy, it must be by the people, because the people have the greatest incentive to make sure that democracy works. Democracy works when the aspirations of the people, collectively and individually, are being met. When the aspirations of the people are not being met, you don't have functional democracy. So for us as a country, for us as a continent, we have seen that the citizens, meaning the electorate, lack the political influence. They lack the political influence to determine the kinds of outcomes that support their aspiration. So if they lack political influence, it means that you must do something to get them to the place where they have political influence to determine outcomes of governance, outcomes of democracy. And the research basically concludes that for you to get the right kind of democracy, you need empowered and engaged electorate. So congratulations, Joyce, because that's what you're doing. You're getting empowered and engaged electorate. The 50-something people who have entered into your program today are not going to go away the same way they came, all right? Because they are going to be empowered, and then they are promising you to become engaged. And then you have to do something about your political class. And so one of the things we're doing in Fixed Politics is to raise a new generation of political leaders who see the public sphere as a place of sacrificial service, as a place of service, as a place to function as the independent entity that is accountable to the people, because the whole essence of democracy is that accountability relationship that exists between the demand side and the supply side, being the political class. So I wish you well, and I hope that as you increasingly focus on this, you will realize that there is absolutely no pathway to the progress of our country and continent without an electorate that is empowered, whether in terms of enhancing their productivity and in terms of combining that productivity enhancement with political literacy. The two things must be a bundled product that we give to the people. A lot of people are suppressed in democracy because productivity-wise, they are so low that any material thing that you give to them is so significant that they are ready to subordinate their aspiration to the daily living of just surviving. If you doubt that, you will go and see the 1,500 that people were said to collect today in order to champion the cause of a government that is repressive on its people. So you've got a lot of work ahead of you, and I wish you well as you do it. God bless you.